Hi, we're the Yos family, and we are Free Methodist missionaries in Hermosillo, Sonora, Mexico.
We have 3 wonderful children.
It's been really awesome to see our kids flourish in ministry in Mexico.
Many people think that being a missionary in Mexico means we own our own donkey, we make our own refried beans, and we wear sombreros all day, and we have these bright serapes that we put across and wear ponchos and things like that and eat tacos. Well, we do eat tacos, but there's so much more than that. Mexico is a country that's hungry for Jesus Christ, and we are there to tell people about Him.
In 2004, I was at a youth ministry training conference. It had nothing to do with missions. It was designed to be a more effective youth pastor. It was a great conference, but the last day of the conference, God spoke to me in a very clear way. God said, "Brian, it's time to go home and prepare things because I want you to move to Mexico. I want to raise up a generation of pastors and Christian leaders that are going to change Mexico and impact the world." Sometimes when you have a thought like that, you wonder, is it just in my head? Is it a random thought, or is it really God? But when God speaks to us, He speaks very clearly, and He will reaffirm what He's saying. God spoke to me so strongly that I literally couldn't stand up. I sat down on the floor, and after a while I went and spent some time alone with God.
When Brian went away for the weekend to a conference, I felt the Lord stirring in my heart that something was going to be changing. And I was so comfortable at Countryside. I was very comfortable with the ministries that I was involved in. And I finally went over to Christy's house and I said, "Christy, I need to pray with you." And we just prayed about what was happening in my heart and that God was really stirring my heart and that changes were going to be coming.
I took my notebook and I began writing down questions because packing up, moving to a country where you don't even speak the language, that's a pretty big deal. So I had a lot of questions for God. And the questions, as I looked at them, boiled down to 3 major questions. The first one was, God, didn't you call me to work in Sandusky at Countryside? Why would you call me to something else right now? And what's going to happen with the ministry here in Countryside? The second question I wrote down, God, what if what you're calling me to doesn't really exist at the moment? What do I do? Do I continue to pursue that, or do I do something else? And the last question was, Lord, what about my family? It's one thing for me to pack up and move to another country, but to take my wife and my 3 children, that is going to rock their world. So, Lord, where does my family fit in all of this? We're back into the conference, and over the next 3 hours, God directly answered every one of those questions because each speaker that came up addressed directly one of those questions I had written. God was working, God was doing amazing things, and as God was calling, He was reaffirming His call and making it clearer and clearer. When I got back to Sandusky, I remember the day after I was back, I was sitting in my office trying to work, but I just had too many thoughts in my mind, and I thought, Lord, how do you tell your wife that God is calling you to do something and moving the whole family to another country or to another ministry? I went home and I really didn't know what to say. So finally I just said, Lori, I need to talk to you about something. And she just looked at me.
And I sat down and I dropped my head and I said, "We're moving to Mexico, aren't we?" And I'll be honest, I did a lot of kicking and screaming. But God really had to work in my heart and say, "You know what? I have a purpose for you in Mexico. I have a plan for you in Mexico." And when that became clear to me, I realized that if I didn't go, then I would be disobedient.
What I realized is that when God calls us, it isn't just us, there's others that are involved. And at the same time that I was at a conference and God was speaking to me, God was also speaking to my wife and to our children over the next several months, because God was calling us as a family. And God had something for us to do. It wasn't just for me, it was for all of us.
When we moved to Mexico, our kids were 6, 10, and 12. And Brian and I, well, we're not going to tell you that part.
We realized that after being at Countryside for 6 years, it was going to be tough to leave.
But what I remember about the church is when we left Countryside to go to Mexico, we didn't feel like we were leaving the church. We really felt like the church was behind us and we were being sent out on a new mission, but still a part of the Countryside Church. When people ask, what do you do in Mexico? The biggest thing that we do is we work with Mexican leaders, with Mexican lay people and with Mexican pastors. We help do training, we do some teaching. We spend a lot of time with a group that works with church planting and another group that is helping Mexico send Mexicans to other countries as missionaries.
And we also get to work with visa teams, visitors and service abroad, teams that come down and work at churches, do ministries, do child ministries, a variety of different things. When people come down and really minister, it gives them the opportunity to meet the people in the Mexican church and work together with them.
Child Care Ministries is one of the neatest ministries I know of in the Free Methodist Church. It allows individuals to have personal contact and to personally impact somebody. And we have several children of pastors that are sponsored. The $25 a month that a sponsor sends makes a huge difference in the life of the child.
It's really important to sponsor a child. Our superintendent in Mexico, his children used to be sponsored through the child care program. And he said to us, Brian and Lori, I want to now sponsor a child, but I want to sponsor a child here in Mexico. Knowing that we were going to be home for 1 full year for home assignment, we talked to the family and said, where should we live during this time? And it was an overwhelming, let's go back to Sandusky, that's home. So that we can be a part of Countryside, because Countryside's our family.
Wow, you guys are back for a whole year. What are you guys going to do?
You know, this isn't vacation. This is part of what we do.
We spent 4 years on the field and then 1 year back, but we are available to the local church while we are home. We are still working on visa trips, putting those together. We're still working with child care ministries, connecting with our church leaders, with the Mexican Missions Department.
Countryside is making a difference in Mexico, not only because you are supporting us, but because the things that we are able to do in partnership with you, that's an extension of Countryside. I think this Go Weekend is really key for Countryside, because Countryside has been doing missions, but now they're taking it to the next level.
We go out, or when Countryside sends teams, either globally or locally or individuals, it's a church enterprise, and the whole church is called together. We all have a role to play in missions. Sometimes we go, sometimes we send, sometimes we pray, but we all have a role. Looking for ways that we can use the resources that God has given us. Sometimes it goes beyond the physical and hits emotional needs. I think of those who have served hours and hours and hours working at funeral dinners for people that maybe they don't even know, but just sharing Christ's love with a family during a difficult time.
Many of you have journeyed with us from the very beginning of our call to missions. Some of you are seeing us for the first time today. But I want to say to you, Countryside, thank you so much for how you have partnered with us, how you've gathered our children into your arms, how you've loved us as a family, and how you have walked alongside us in our mission call, and how you supported us with love, prayers, and finances. We feel that you are a blessing to our family. Thank you.